Alrighty, let's get started. Thanks so much for joining us this morning and this afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. We appreciate you making some time to be with us. So this month is all about the campaign canvas, and for these final 3 months being, September, October, November, for the Eloqua user group, we'll be focusing on the basics, as we call it. So this month, campaign canvas. Next month, we'll be focusing on the email design editor. And then in November, which will be our final user group for the year, we'll be looking at landing pages and forms. So hopefully you can join us for those sessions as well. We look forward to seeing you. Let's have a quick look at the agenda and dive in. So welcome and introduction. Obviously, welcome. Good to have you with us. 3 key areas we'll be focusing on. First one being the campaign canvas, looking at kind of the basics of the canvas and understanding the canvas. How to navigate it, what all the bits and pieces are. We'll be looking at the actions, options, settings, notes, reporting, other things that you can do directly from the campaign canvas. Second part will be to look at the elements in a little bit more detail and understand those. And then finally looking potentially at some of the apps and integration. When we ran this session for the Asia Pacific audience, we didn't even get a chance to get to number 5. So let's see how we go. So it's always good if you've got questions, so please feel free to submit those as we go through. And on that point, there's probably housekeeping. So as you know, we use Zoom to host and record the webinars, and you will find replays available on our website at marketingcube.com.au. Just go to the blog and you'll see a whole range of replays that you can access there. Please feel free to ask questions as we go throughout. The Q&A is the best way to do that. Just be aware the Q&A is public, and so other people can see those and potentially upvote. So if they've got the same question that you had, feel free to upvote that. If you do want to ask a question more privately, feel free to use the chat function, and happy to try and answer that for you. And let's jump in. So my name is Derek Bell. I'm your host for today, and I'm the Director of Customer Success and Marketing here at Marketing Cube. We're an Australian-based organization, and we've been servicing Eloqua clients globally since around 2007. So we have clients across Asia Pac, as you would imagine, as well as in the United States and also in Europe. So thank you for making some time to be with us. That cheeky little QR code that I've got on the screen there is just a plug for October. So that'll pop up every now and then as we go through the session today. So feel free to scan that and register. Of course, as a subscribed member of the user group, you'll receive an invitation anyway in the next few days, unless, of course, you register today. Otherwise, we'll not send you invitations because you've already registered. So Eloqua magic at work. Just wanted to share some stats with you. I thought we had a considerable number of people register for the session today, or for this topic this month. And I thought it was interesting. You realize there are obviously a range of questions we ask people when they register for the user group each month. And so on average, people attending the user group have been Eloqua users for around 3.7 years. It varies from as little as 2 or 3 months through to 10 plus years, by the way. But on average for this month, we're looking at around 3.7 years. Interestingly, the SMS reminder that you may or may not have noticed, some of you may have requested it, 20% of people this month requested an SMS reminder. That almost sounds a bit fudge there, the old 80-20 rule, but I promise you it was actually right on 20% this month for some obscure reason. Then looking at people and their frequency of accessing Eloqua, so there are a range of questions we ask you, and we then transpose that into some other information. And so that we arrive at 77% of people actually log into Eloqua every day. That is people who have registered to attend this month. So they're daily users of the platform. They're not logging in once a week or less, every day. So that's good news. Then just randomly, some other questions we ask people. 36.6% of registrants this month are Zoom clients. So we're using Zoom at the moment. We also use On24 for different types of webinars that we might run from time to time. But by far, Zoom is the biggest, the largest number of customers that we have use Zoom as well as Eloqua. Then as a breakdown from a geographical point of view, 24% of people who registered this month are from the Americas, and 4.9, almost 5% from EMEA, so the Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So just some interesting things. And I share that with you because this is information. There are all sorts of questions you can ask people over time as they register for your various webinars. And if this type of information is helpful and useful to you, then yeah, you should start asking these questions. And the more you ask the questions, the more data you'll get and the more you can do with it. Now, this became particularly relevant this month because what we did is we sent an email out to anybody that registered this month, and we've got their normal response or confirmation email. Excuse me. But in addition to that, we then filtered down to those people who had been using Eloqua for 2 years or less. And so we sent them a personal email from myself. And in that email, we sort of asked them, what do you want to get out of today's session? And so that email went out and we got a range of responses, which was, excuse me, was fantastic. And so we've tried to weave that into today's session as well. So hopefully we can address some of that. I'm just looking down the list. I can see a few people. Devin, good to have you with us. Lauren, good to see you. And Linda. So yeah, a few different people that we approached and asked for some information. So let's get on with it and dive into the campaign canvas. So the first area we wanted to focus on, and we certainly wanted to try and avoid doing death by PowerPoint. So much of today will be spent in Eloqua looking at the actual platform itself. So you'll be familiar, obviously, with this screen. This is where life sort of starts for most users with the platform, and it's on the home screen. But we want to go to campaigns up here in the top right-hand corner. And our focus today will be on the multi-step campaign and specifically looking at the campaign canvas. So I'm going to start with a blank campaign. It's a little bit easier to help explain what's going on. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so you can hopefully see that a little bit easier. And let's start looking at the key areas of the platform. So how we name our campaign is obviously important. So you can give that a name and then go ahead and hit save. And then from there, you can drop it wherever you need to. I'm just going to drop it in my unfiled folder at this point. And so once you do that, it's now saved. It's always a really good idea to save your canvas earlier than later, because some of the functions, when you start to drag elements onto the campaign, they won't actually function and do what you need them to do unless the campaign canvas is actually saved to start with. So just a heads up for you. If you've experienced that and thought, why is this working? It may be that you haven't actually saved your canvases yet. Then we have a file, an actions, and an options menu. So the file menu is pretty much what you would expect. It's new, open, save, save as template. And we'll look at some templates here in a moment as well and show you how important that can be to help you with the more repetitive type of campaigns that you might be doing. Think of newsletter campaigns or webinar style campaigns where you're issuing invitations and inviting people to come along, issue reminders, those sorts of things. They can be quite repetitive from a process point of view. Clearly the content changes, but quite repetitive from a process point of view. So they're a great candidate for a template. There are different actions that can be taken. Verifying the campaign, we'll have a look at that in a moment. The verify ties in with the little error messages that you can see here in the top left-hand corner. Now, some of these aren't available until you've got some things on the canvas or aren't available until after the campaign has actually concluded or is at least active. Uploading external activities is one of those examples. These options here, show all steps, refer to down here. You'll see how that menu changed, but you can also control that right here, just toggling like so. And then you can play with favorites. You can click on the star, and then when you minimize it, those extra pieces that you've just clicked on the star essentially then become your favorites. And you can undo that at any particular point. Just come in and click on the stars again, and they're no longer your favorites. As we move into options area, the options area is quite important, and there are a number of really cool things in here. First one, campaign settings. So campaign settings is where you control the start and end date of your campaign. You can also add some notes in here and some comments, sort of give you a high-level description, perhaps, of the campaign and what it does. The pop-up date here, you'll notice you've got a start at date and time for your campaign. The time zone that you see here should default to your time zone. If it doesn't, that's a really quick fix and a really easy fix by your Eloqua administrator. It just means that your user profile is not aligned to your actual time zone. So if your administrator just goes into your user profile and accesses that, they can assign your local time zone to you. That means then when you're looking around Eloqua and doing things, it'll always default to your time zone, which is helpful. Now, end dates are an important part of any campaign. And you can use a custom date, which is the one that I tend to use 99% of the time. And so I would come in here and select exactly what I want. Today's the 14th. And so let's say I have it end on the 28th. Now, the first thing you'll notice is I have a start date and a time, but I don't have an end time. I only have an end date. So what time does it end? Good question. So the end time, and it's actually midnight, but I prefer to say 11:59 p.m. It just seems to be a little bit easier and avoid a bit of confusion sometimes. So unless you're ex-military and are focusing on and have good confidence on 24-hour time, which I'm clearly not, I run with 11:59 p.m. So in this example, this campaign would conclude at 11:59 p.m. on the 28th of September. Technically, it would be midnight, but who's going to argue 60 seconds? Okay. All right. So something to be aware of when you think about the flow and if you've got a campaign with people automatically entering the campaign at a range of different times, it's good to have a solid understanding as to when that end date is. Other areas you've got here are notes, and we'll talk a little bit more about notes shortly. You've got apps that are visible if you have any apps running. There's also a range of reports that you can access directly here from the canvas. Now, this is a little bit easier to show you on an actual live campaign versus on one that is not. So let me identify a quick campaign that I can show you that is active, and I may as well use the user group. All right, so once the campaign is actually running or is completed, you can jump in here and look at some campaign analysis. So one of the questions that people had asked was, how do I quickly look at reporting, which is a great question. You can obviously go off into the insight area, but as you know, you've got to navigate through and find the right report that you want and then find your campaign, etc. But you can actually go straight to insight directly from the campaign canvas, and it will show you the campaign analysis report by campaign. So this is a very small campaign, only 48 cents, but you can see a 72% open rate, which is pretty good. Possible forwards, so on and so forth. And so that's probably the quickest way to jump into Insight. Once you're here, though, you can go to your home icon or the home area of Insight and now navigate around and find other reports that you may want to play with. So how did I do that? So again, you've got the analytics menu here that slides out, and you'll see it's broken down into operational reports and insight reports. So all we've done there is click on campaign analysis and bang, straight into to have a look at that in a bit more detail. The quickest way otherwise to look at reporting is probably to go to the dashboards area. We're going to stay away from dashboards today because we want to keep our laser focus here on the campaign canvas and what's available. Now, the other things that are available here is the audit function. So this is good. Now, in this particular example, it's really just me that's been working on this campaign, no one else in the team. And that's really visible, as you can see here. So at least what that's able to tell you is who's had access to the campaign, if people have potentially deactivated it and then reactivated it, or they've edited it in some sort of detail. At least you've got a bit of record there to play with. And that can be up to 3 months of information. All right. So that's your audit details. The email statistics, this is probably the fastest or the quickest way. Once your campaign has gone active, it's this information that typically will populate the fastest for you. So if you're a bit of a nervous Nelly and it's your first campaign or second campaign, and you're like, okay, well, how do I know things have actually gone? How do I know emails have actually been sent? If you jump into email stats, you'll see here really quickly. So 48 emails were sent, 48 were delivered. We had over 171 opens, 34 of which were unique, a far more interesting metric. And there's a little bit more information there around hard bounce backs, unique click-throughs, and so on and so forth. Now, if you've got multiple emails on your campaign canvas, well, then having good naming conventions makes it real clear for you as to what's going on. And you can actually filter right down to, for instance, the last 10 minutes. So if I choose the last 10 minutes, this will be blank. Essentially, nothing will have happened. So see, it's gone to 0 when you look across there. So that's the quickest way. So you've launched your campaign and you're really trying to understand, okay, what's going on? Has it actually done what I need? Well, yes, if you jump in here to the settings area, email statistics, you'll be able to see that. Now, the concept of an entry and exit, as you know, the core basics of Eloqua are that a campaign will have an audience or a group of campaign members, typically a segment. And those people, in this case, 48 people, become campaign members and they enter the campaign at a certain point, then they must exit the campaign at a certain point. So if I look at the entry report, and let's change that to the last 3 months so I get as much information as possible, you can see the entry date of people coming into the campaign is actually all over the shop. Okay. So yeah, you can see different times and so on and so forth. And that's just the nature of this particular campaign. Then you'll notice there's also an exit report. So again, the exit report will run, and here it is. And here we can see the exit points that people left the campaigns. And you can see that they finished. So again, that can just be really quite helpful in getting confirmation from your point of view that everything is running and functioning as you kind of expect and want it to. Now, while we're here, especially on this active or completed campaign, this information right here at the top of the screen is often overlooked by people, but it actually answers a lot of questions that people have about analytics. So if I have a campaign and that campaign is running from, say, Monday to Friday, really short, 5 days, that's it. And obviously you're keen to get, maximize your reporting. Sometimes what users will do is they'll push out the end date of their campaign. They'll come here and look at end date, and they'll say, you know what, I'm just going to make my end date 1 year. There's actually really no benefit in doing that because, as it says right here, campaign responses will be captured for 12 months after the end date of the campaign. So if your campaign, starts on Monday and finishes on Friday, we're obviously going to capture all the analytics through that process. But as of Saturday, Eloqua will continue for 12 months to capture any engagement data, any opens, any clicks, any form submissions, landing page visits, etc. All of that information will be captured and attributed to this particular campaign. And that will be done for 12 months after the end date. So there's really no need to artificially extend the end date of your campaign, which is a reasonably common behavior that I see with some Eloqua users. Go ahead and set your start and end date to be the reality of when your campaign does in fact start and when it should end, okay? The other benefit of doing that is when you go to Insight and you start to look at reports potentially by month or by quarter, the results you get back will be far more accurate because of your accuracy around your start dates and your end dates. If you're constantly artificially extending end dates of campaigns that in reality only went for 2 or 3 days, then that quarter by quarter reporting gets a bit fuzzy, really, and a bit incorrect and a bit inaccurate, essentially. So I'll leave that with you to think about. Okay, let's come back to our campaign canvas. So we've looked at the campaign settings area, which was here in the options menu. Then there's also campaign fields. So the campaign fields contain 4 tabs. This will populate. You can do the same thing here. You can modify this. Yeah. So what you can do here is the default is to have reporting start on the day the campaign goes active. And for most people, that's highly likely that's what you want. If for some reason you don't want that to be the case and you want to delay reporting to start a little bit later, a couple of days later, then that's fine. You can do that. Come in here and select a particular date, and that's when the campaign reporting will start. And that starts at midnight, by the way. Now, these 3 fields here, which are standard for everybody using Eloqua, product, region, and campaign type, Those names we can't change. So we can't change the word product, we can't change region or campaign type, but you do have complete control over the values that you enter in here. And so we find in some parts of the world under region, for instance, people recycle that one and they use it for something else because they may not market outside of their country and they don't really break it down. Like I know certainly within the US market, it's fairly common to be talking sort of East Coast, West Coast, sort of central, etc. That's fairly common vernacular, is my understanding, within the US market. And certainly across Europe as well. You might be talking Northern Europe, Southern Europe, and West, East, that sort of stuff. In Australia, not so much. We don't really, it's very rare that a company would only target a particular state within Australia. That's kind of unusual in the Australian business world. We just market to the entire country, essentially, just different behaviors. So you have complete control over the values that you enter in here. And what we've done is we make those required here at Marketing Cube, and we encourage all of our clients to do exactly the same thing. Because when you get to your dashboard reports, which are the reports here, these dashboard reports, it's those three fields that actually filter through and provide you with the data that you see in the campaign analysis reports. Sorry, in the campaign analysis overview dashboards. So when you look at these reports, if all you see is, and an example would be something like this, if you just see a single block, like the yellow one you can see in front of you, and it just says, I think it says untitled, uncategorized, it just means that you haven't configured that reporting. So what you're missing is the ability to do any level of granularity in your reporting, which I think is a negative, right? I mean, it doesn't take that long to, literally, the time to configure your system in Eloqua to do this probably takes about 10 minutes, but it could probably take you 2 or 3 days as a team to sit down and agree what this should be. So that's really another discussion for another time. It takes us away from our campaign canvas, but important for you to be aware of. Financials, for those of you who are integrated with a CRM platform, and certainly Salesforce CRM is probably one of the more popular platforms, then you'll be familiar with this construct from the campaign object within Salesforce CRM. That information can also flow through to some of your Oracle CRM products as well, but it can be helpful. Custom fields, you can create custom fields. So these are referred to as the general system fields. You can create custom fields. And a really good example of that is potentially a cost center ID. So it may be that as you run a campaign in Eloqua, in reality, the Eloqua campaign is just one campaign in amongst many other campaigns. You might have television running, you might have magazines running, you might have radio, etc. So there are cost codes assigned to all of those, and Eloqua is no different. And so from a reporting point of view, you want to be able to assign that unique code to this particular campaign. So when you pull your reporting, you can roll all of that information up from a cost point of view. So you can create custom fields. Notifications, this is a question that came up from some users in relation to, so I've got my end date of my campaign set, and the end date is in fact 2025, because it's kind of an always on nurture campaign that we just modify from time to time. But how on earth are we going to remember? My first tip to you would be you should pop it into your Outlook calendar, your Gmail calendar or something, and you probably should share that with a few members of the team. That'd be my first suggestion to you. The second suggestion would be to use a notification construct within Eloqua, but the maximum you can do is 5 days. Now, if you've got a campaign that's a nurture campaign that might have 10 or 15 emails and might run for an extensive period of time, 5 days notice might not be enough time for you to start reconfiguring things, hence the suggestion to potentially add something to your Outlook calendar. But this would be helpful. You can add other users in here as well, so you can choose other people within the organization and just drop their details in. They will then receive an Eloqua system generated email with details of the campaign, advising that the end date of that campaign is going to be reached within 5 days or less, depending on which one you select. So they're your campaign fields information available in the options menu. So that notifications, that just takes you straight to that tab versus going through campaign fields. So it's just a little bit of a shortcut. and permissions. Now, this one will really depend, and this is kind of unique for every single Eloqua client. And this construct of asset permissions exists right across the platform with forms, landing pages, segments, emails, pretty much most areas. And so what it does, it just enables you to control what people can do. The most common thing people are looking to control with the campaign canvas is who's actually able to activate a campaign. So you can see here, we don't allow sales users to activate. That's always a good thing. And basic users are unable to activate a campaign. So they need to sort of go up a level before they're in a position to be able to actually activate a campaign. So some helpful information there. But again, that will differ for kind of everybody on the call today. Then we've covered everything there. And just you probably have already figured these things out just in relation to navigating around. Like so, this search bar, honest to goodness, I don't think I've really ever used that. I just scroll up and down, but you can search. Sometimes if you're working off a laptop, it can be helpful because the screen is obviously quite big, but you can use that function to pull things up. So that could be helpful. All right, so I think that pretty much covers everything from that point of view. The only thing to probably play with is the verification piece. Let me quickly show you that. So I'm just going to drag these out for fun. Okay, so you notice I can drag those things out, or I can in fact double click. So you can either drag things onto your canvas, or you can double click and it'll add them to the canvas as well. So put them together like so. Now, notice my error message is up here in the top left-hand corner, currently say 3. And the 3 that it's referring to are those campaign reporting fields that I just showed you. So it just means I have to go in and select those because I've made them required. Eloqua tells me that, unless I select them, they're counted as an error. So I need to go in and fix that before I can launch my campaign. But if I now click on save, that number has changed from 3 to 8. So what I've done there, by clicking on save, it's essentially done the same thing as verify. So if I then move to campaign, now if I click on verify, see it's gone to 9. And the difference when you click on verify, it then always pops this message up at the end and itemizes for you what's missing and what needs some action before you can activate your campaign. So that's the verify function. And probably the last thing I should show you is the help menu. Depending on you and how you work and how you think, some people completely ignore help menus and just try to figure it out. Other people will go to the help menu at the first thing and try and find the answer. Everybody's a little bit different in the way that they learn, but there's certainly some great resources in here, and I'd certainly commend these to you. There's, I think the Eloqua Help Center is one of the best help centers with a software platform that I probably used in my career. It's so good in the way that it gives you really good examples. It doesn't just say, do this, and do this. It actually gives you some context and then kind of walks you through how to do things. So yeah, don't miss the Help Center. It's a great resource. So next part is to try and drive a little bit of CX magic using the elements of the campaign canvas. So what I wanted to try and do here was help you, hopefully, and there's that sneaky QR code again for you in the bottom right-hand corner. If your campaign canvases look like this, where you've got a segment and a single email, you could really just use Outlook to do that. Eloqua was probably an unnecessary expense in the process. So what we want to try and do is lift our game and certainly use Eloqua and really take advantage of the platform. There's so much that you can do with it, but I appreciate at the same time we have to start somewhere. This is a start. It's not the best start, but it's a start. Okay, so we want to get better than that. One of the questions that was submitted by people that we emailed back to ask for their specific feedback was, we know we should be using multi-step campaigns, but we really probably do more simple email campaigns, but we know we need to get to the multi-step. Why? I think the question was, can you help me sell that internally as to why I should do it? So I kind of thought, what was the best way to answer that question? So I took some data literally from this month, okay, and looking at how we reach out to people using Eloqua to subscribe and to join us here, obviously, at the webinar each month. So that big yellow line you can see, that's the number of people that responded to the very first email that we sent out. So we sent out a number of emails to different groups, but essentially everyone gets an initial invitation. We then follow that up with a couple of other emails, and let me show you what the difference is. So there's slightly different audiences, etc. But you can see we don't send just one email out to people to join us for the webinar. We actually send a whole range of emails. Now, any one individual will actually not receive any more than two. So we're not spamming people and saying, you've got to come, you've got to come, you've got to come. That's not how it works. What we're trying to do is tailor those outbound communications to the individuals in such a way that it resonates. Okay. So because we run this on a monthly basis, the campaigns all overlap essentially. So the very first email you can see at the top there is those who attended last month's webinar. So when you attend an event, we will send you an invitation saying, thank you so much for joining us. Here's detail on how to access the replay. And hey, look, while you're here, why don't you go ahead and register for the next episode of Eloqua User Group? And so that blue indicates the number of people that registered there. The next one down is new subscribers. So anybody that registered after the last user group will receive a slightly different communication than everybody else that has been a subscriber. The second one down, or the third one down, is the big one. That's the one that we get typically the best response from. Then we also have, and notice the no-show list, right? So this is the people who registered for last month but didn't show up, didn't attend the webinar. So we send them an email, hey, sorry, we missed you. Here you can access the replay from last month. While you're here, why don't you register for next month? And so you can see we obviously get some conversion on that one as well. This particular month, because of the topic, we decided to reach out to people who we know use Eloqua, but are not actually subscribed members of the user group. And we certainly got a pretty good response there as well, which was great. Those who attended last month, now you'll notice my sequencing here. So 001 means the first email that goes out. 002 in my language is people who they haven't opened the first email for the call to action for this month, but they've opened the second email, and that's the one that has converted them. Then invitation number 2 for subscribers, a pretty good response. That 003, that one's a little bit different. The way that one works is the first email's gone out. They may have opened it, but they haven't registered. So we know they've looked at the email, they've potentially looked at the agenda, looked at the topic, but they've not actually registered. And so the 003 is sort of a second email that goes to that group of people to say, okay, last chance, love to have you join us, etc. Then very small at the bottom is our blog and website. They're all the same thing, but I decided I wanted to break the granularity down. So we have links on the website under events and then also in the blog as well for people. So it just gives me some granularity there. So how on earth did we do all of that? And you saw the result clearly. Like if we just sent one email, our registrations would have been significantly lower than they were based on that information. Okay, so here you can see total numbers of different people that fall into different areas. Let me scroll over and I'll focus on the US and Europe group. So we had 6 new subscribers this month. We've got nearly 200 subscribers across the Americas and EMEA at the moment. And off they go. It's just through the processes. Okay, so you can see the new members get a slightly different email here compared to these people, but they all funnel into the same landing page to register for the event. And then once those emails have gone out, the groups all come together. We now wait until the second invitation is issued. And so you can see number 2 and number 3. So number 2 goes to people who didn't open the first email. And this email over here, the last one, is sent to people who did open the first one, but they haven't registered for this particular month. So the question was, why should I use multi-step campaigns instead of a simple email campaign? And I say to you that you will get a much better result. Don't be sending the same thing over and over again. We're not in the business of spamming. You've got to be smart in relation to how you present the content. So with this email here, for example, anybody that gets this email didn't even open the first one. So that potentially means that the subject line just didn't cut it. It didn't get their attention. The preview text maybe didn't add any value, etc. So what we need to do there with that second email is definitely play around with the subject line and highly encourage you to play around with the preview text so it looks a little bit different. Once they open it, it can be the exact same email. That's fine. This one here, basically the context of this one is what we're saying is, hey, look, we saw that you've had a look, you saw the agenda, but you haven't registered. We really think you'll get something out of this month. Hope you can make it and click here to register. All right, let me just have a look. Kevin has a question. Derek, could you describe the dotted lines? Yeah, absolutely, I can. So let me zoom out a little bit because it might make it a little bit easier to see. And I don't know why, but Firefox does not like my keyboard shortcuts. I have to manually go to my view menu to zoom in and out for some obscure reason. But anyway, so Kevin wants to know, what are all these dotted lines? Okay, so these dotted lines are telling you that in all of the emails that you see the dotted lines go off to, that there is a link in those emails to that particular landing page. That's the landing page icon that you can see there. And if I zoom right in, that might make it a bit easier. So that's the landing page icon. And then this one here is the form. So it's confirming for me that that form is sitting on that landing page and all of those emails across that canvas have a link in it to come to that particular landing page. So what that does for me is it serves as a great reminder that I have in fact got the right links in all of my emails coming into the right landing pages. So at a glance, I can look at that. And if there was no dotted line coming from this particular email, I'd be like, well, hang on a minute, I need to double check that because I probably haven't got the right link in there, or I haven't got a link in there, period. Now, how do you get that on the canvas? Probably the easiest way to show you that is to quickly go ahead, 2022-0913. So if I look at an invitation, add it. Now, did you notice as soon as I added it, this little icon appeared next to the email? So what's happened there is Eloqua has said to me, hey, Derek, in that email, there is a link to an Eloqua landing page. So I double click on that, open it up, and I say add, and then Eloqua drops it. There it is right there. So see the dotted line again, Kevin, has appeared. And then notice the process repeats. Now there's another little black icon. This one is the form. And so again, repeat the process and then drop it onto the campaign. Okay, oh, I've got a thumbs up. Thank you very much. So the key benefit of doing that, because you'll notice when you look at the, over here, when you look at assets, trying to zoom in there, when you look at the assets, it says reporting only. You're like, well, what does that mean? Reporting only? I don't understand what that means. Okay, what that means is when you add them to the campaign canvas, and actually I can show you right here, if I click on campaign analysis, it means that I will get a consolidated report at the campaign level that will show me not only the interactions of people with my emails, but it will include, and you can see right here at the bottom of the page, it includes all of the landing page engagement that took place. So there were 107 form submissions, total visitors 184 to the various landing pages involved in the campaign, etc., total page views, and so on and so forth, and time spent on there. Now, if I didn't add those two icons to my campaign canvas, that reporting around pages would be blank. And it's a real pain in the butt, I promise you, to then have to go away and pull a campaign report, a landing page report, and a form report. And in reality, there's no way that you can pull those reports knowingly have them reflect just engagement with this campaign. Because if you're using those landing pages or forms in any other campaigns, any information from those will all flow through directly into the form. So if you want to get accurate reporting, the key message for you is when you look at your campaign canvas like this, if you see any of those little black icons next to your email, don't leave them there. Just double click on them, drop them on the campaign, and then save. If it's the same one, like in my example, it's the same link in all of the emails going to that landing page, just add it once. And every time you hit save, and as you add more emails, Eloqua will automatically draw the lines for you. So basically, it's a visual confirmation. It's a visual confirmation that you've got the right link in the right email going to the correct landing page and the correct form. Linda asked the question, can you talk about the contact washing machine step that you've included in the campaigns? I absolutely can do that. And that's almost coming up next. So let me go back to here. So what I wanted to focus on here, just before we jump into that, which we will do, Linda, I promise, is just explain some of the key things that you probably see every day that you may have missed. So you can't action some of these until you actually add an asset to your email. So notice how it changes blue. It's gone from gray to blue. That means we've actually added an email to it. Now I can start to see what's going on in here. So signature, if you use signatures, you've got the control there to be able to use a dynamic rule, which means that that email goes out and it might go to 10,000 people, and it can come from any one of 25 salespeople within your organization. That's one example. You can override that though, and actually force it to come from one person, so one individual. Usually the best example of that is, it's something from the CEO, or it's something from a senior vice president, etc., or a regional representative, that type of stuff. But you've got the ability to control that. Sending options, typically not something that you need to play around with a great deal, but sometimes it can be helpful. Allow emails to be resent to past recipients. So if this particular email or this campaign potentially could have people coming in multiple times, then you need to make sure you select that option, because remember, the default with Eloqua is to never send the same email to the same person twice. Then on to, you can do the send into smaller batches. If your segments are in the vicinity of hundreds of thousands or into millions, then breaking send into smaller batches can be helpful. It's not necessary. It's not really a restraint on Eloqua. Eloqua doesn't really have a problem sending those emails. That's not the problem. The problem is if you have a link in those emails saying you come to our website to access this, do you necessarily want 1 million emails being sent out at one point and then potentially having 20, 30, 40% of those people clicking and all heading to the website at the same time? So you may want to break it into small batches. That's kind of what that's all about. But if you're only sending 10 or 15,000 or 50,000, don't worry about it. It's generally not a problem. Scheduling can be really helpful. So scheduling is key, and that's one of the key things we do here with our group. So the reason we've got the Asia Pac people on the left and the US and EMEA here on the right is because I want to make sure that when emails arrive for you guys, that they arrive generally within your working day. I don't really want to send you emails at 2 a.m. your time. I want to try and do my best to get those emails to you within your working day. And so you can see I've got the ability to control that and select the time zones along with that as well. So scheduling can be really helpful. The other one is routing, and people often say, what is routing for? I don't understand. So essentially it says here, automatically route contacts excluded from the email send. And largely the only people that would be excluded from an email send is somebody who has previously unsubscribed or they've hard bounced, etc., and the email can't be sent. So what you can do is route them somewhere, and that can help from a reporting point of view. For a one-off campaign that you're running, if it's just running from Monday to Friday, it's not really a big deal. But when you start looking at nurture campaigns that might in fact run for 12 months or even 2 years, with the volume of people you have going through, it can get really messy on the campaign canvas with hundreds of people at all different locations. So what you generally want to try and do is, if people aren't progressing for whatever reason, hard bounces, unsubscribes, let's get them out of the canvas. Let's get them off the screen. And so routing can be a good way to help with that process. All right, back to here. The other question that did come up on a fairly regular basis was this concept of evaluation period. You can see here the evaluation period. Essentially, the way this works is, let me lay this out so it makes more sense. Okay, yeah. So let's say we've got 100 people sitting here in our segment. They come down here, 100 people are then sent that particular email. Then I might configure my wait step to say 4 days. And so everybody, the 100 people, all of them together collectively, will stop. They'll wait for 4 days. And then we will go on and ask the question, did they click on the email? Okay, if we decide to skip the wait step altogether, then we can use the evaluation step in here. So if I run with that same idea of last 4 days, so 4 days, and typically you would align the two. They usually are the same, don't have to be, but logic, it just kind of helps to do it that way. You'll notice the little stopwatch. That's what that little black dot is, by the way. It's a stopwatch, appears on the screen. And so what's now is going to happen, and I think it's every, let's say, once you go over a day of evaluation, I think it's every 60 minutes, it might be every 30 minutes, but I think it's every 60 minutes. Eloqua will ask the question, have they clicked on the email? I like to say it's a bit like a small child on a road trip, right? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? What's going to happen is that for 4 days, for every hour of every day for 4 days, Eloqua will continue to ask the question of the 100 people. So they've been sent their email. They all now sit here. They're going to sit here for 4 days, which is our evaluation period. And we're going to ask the question, did they click? Did they click? Did they click? Now, as soon as the answer is yes, they have in fact clicked, then they will be heading off in this direction. However, at the end of the 4-day period, if the answer is still no, they haven't clicked, then they will head off in the negative direction. And you notice the slight color coding there. So if it's negative, it's that reddish color. If it's positive, it's green. Okay, so that's what an evaluation period is done. Now, why would you do that? In the course of a standard campaign, as in it's only running for a couple of weeks, etc., probably not a big deal, but it really is fantastic when you've got a long campaign that might have 10 or 15 emails, and it might take someone 6 months to go through that whole process. So if they don't open anything and they don't click on anything, it might in fact take 6 months for them to get through. But if people are actually engaging and opening and clicking, let's speed up the process a little bit, right? If they're actually hungry for information, let's speed up the process. So in this example, what might happen is you send out the email that arrives in someone's inbox at, let's say, 10 a.m. Then they drop down here immediately. It's now 10:01 a.m. And we're, depending on what we've set here, so by 11 o'clock, we're going to say, did they click? Well, they have clicked already. They've opened it and they've clicked the email. So with all things being perfect, they would in fact be able to move through this process at 11 a.m., literally an hour after it arrived in their inbox, versus their compadre who maybe sits next to them, hasn't done anything and won't look at the email. They'll in fact, at the end of 4 days, head off in this direction. But there's every chance that the more engaged person is actually already onto email 2 and 3 by the time 4 days comes around, whereas someone else is still working their way through the campaign. So it's about engaging with people as they engage with you. Okay. So hopefully that helps release some of the mystery around that particular step. Now, that final part that we wanted to look at, which will cover this one. This is sort of your the apps, etc. And so, Linda, the contact washing machine that you've talked about falls into this category. And so the contact washing machine is a super cool little app, and I'm just going to access it from here. If when you come down to your actions menu and you don't have the contact washing machine, it's a real quick fix. It's a free app provided by Oracle. So you just need your Eloqua administrator to add that to your instance. You will find information in the Help Center. So if you go into the Eloqua Help Center, you will be able to find information in there as well about the contact washing machine and all of the different functions that it can perform, which are many. Okay, so the most basic one that I use the contact washing machine for is to make sure that when an email goes out, a person's first name is in fact delivered in proper case. So what I do is I say to the washing machine, identify my source field. In this case, the one to cleanse is the first name field. I can add conditions if I want to. In this case, I don't want to. I just want to simply perform an action. And the action that I want to perform is proper case. And then we need to identify the destination field. So this selects the Eloqua contact field to put the results back into. It's really important you select this one, otherwise it could really mess up the data. So you want to select first name. And so if I've actually built that, once you configure that, and if you save it as a template, that configuration actually remains in place. So to your point, Linda, you identified it right here. I don't actually have to do this each month because I've already got it built into my campaign. So I actually never open that particular that element on the campaign. It just does what it does every month. The same with the routing that I've got in place again. So actually routing is a good thing too. When you're using apps, and apps rely on external connection to different platforms to achieve things typically, and things can go wrong. APIs can fail, connections can die and then be restored, etc. And it's just bad timing in the universe. So if they should fail for whatever reason, then you can use the routing to automatically progress people regardless. You may want to take them out of the campaign because it's too important that they have done whatever the app was going to do. But if it's not super critical, then maybe you at least progress them through. Okay. Now, some of the other apps that are more common that people use, and Linda, oh yeah, just you saw there as I looked at all those different actions, these are helpful to, like, the trim is if you've got sort of sloppy data entry where you might have a city or state and then there's 2 or 3 spaces, for instance, etc. It could be just, bad CRM data entry or whatever the case may be, then you can use this contact washing machine to help clean that data up as it goes through. But have a look in the search for contact washing machine in the help center, and you'll find a whole list of information and ideas and suggestions as to how you can get more value out of the contact washing machine. Okay. So some other apps that you may be familiar with are certainly like the different webinar apps. So we've got Zoom. You can use create external activities directly on your campaign canvas. There's also another one that enables you to submit forms. So why would you want to do that? Okay, so in the context of a campaign, you may find from time to time that there are form processing steps that you would like to execute, and that typically would relate to CRM integration. Someone's done something here on the campaign canvas, excuse me, and you then want to push information through to the CRM. And so using a form to kick off that integration is sometimes the easiest way to do that. And so you can actually trigger that directly here on the campaign canvas. So you need to build the form, build the processing steps, and then you access that form here using the edit pencil, and you can associate that then with your particular campaign. So you can see all your forms would appear here, for instance. So that can be another helpful app to use on your canvas. You may have SMS functionality. Eloqua have just recently released their own SMS. Well, actually, it's been nearly 12 months, I think now. But there are other third-party SMS providers as well. If you use Salesforce CRM and have that connected to Eloqua, the campaign association function is super cool. So what that enables you to do is, actually, I think I can show you one here. So what's happened here is we have the Salesforce CRM iteration in place. And what I'm doing is I'm actually assigning the status within Salesforce. So if we go back into Salesforce as a CRM user, look at the campaign and look at the campaign member status of individual people, then we can see what's being updated and we can get that information from Eloqua back into the CRM. So it's less phone calls from the sales team, etc. So that can be a great tool to use from a campaign point of view. There's LinkedIn functionality, which some of you have probably used, I'm sure. Update rules are phenomenal in what they can achieve, and we certainly don't have time to cover those off today. Have a little look in the Help Center to get started, but update rules can help you cleanse data, scrub data, automatically assign values to people. There's a whole swag of things that you can do with update rules. They're often used also quite heavily on the program canvas, another part of Eloqua that you're probably very familiar with. All righty. Well, just as expected, as we kind of went through with the Australian group, we're literally now 2 minutes away from finishing. There's another question here from Kevin. Hi, Derek. Are there rules baked in the SMS app for opt-out? Certainly with the app that we have, which is the one I've shown you right here. Yeah, absolutely. The SMS provider actually manages that. So if an opt-out is in fact captured, the SMS provider manages that whole process. We can definitely bring that information back into Eloqua, which is easy enough to do. But we find most clients don't get too stressed about it because they know the SMS provider actually really manages that opt-out process anyway. So even if they put somebody into a campaign and then go to send out an SMS, if that person has in fact opted out, the SMS provider won't even send the SMS, and as a result, you don't get charged anyway because nothing was actually sent. So, and I would imagine that the Eloqua product is probably much the same because the onus is quite heavily also on the SMS providers from that point of view. So hopefully that answers your question. So as expected, we really won't get time to look at that. Most of these we covered last month anyway. So if you've got any questions on those, there is information in the blog post from last month. So I'd encourage you to go back and have a little look at that. But otherwise, thank you very much for joining us. So hopefully you enjoyed it. It was a pretty quick paced. We've obviously recorded the session. We'll try to get that back to you next week. I think if you looked at the Australian session as well, it's pretty much exactly the same, not too different. But thank you again for making some time, and hopefully you can join us in October. We're going to take a deeper dive into the email design editor and just look at some of the nuances and different things to consider there as you build your emails within the design editor. So look forward to you joining us then. Thank you very much, and thanks again for making some time.